All right, yesterday, those Brett Kavanaugh hearings going, and also Christine Blasi Ford testifying as well. For more on this, let's bring in Tom Fitton, head of Judicial Watch. Tom, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you guys.
So you were in the room yesterday, and you and I haven't even talked about this subject. I just saw you on television. From your perch in the room, what did you make of all the testimony yesterday?
It was an incredible day. The beginning of the hearing, as I've been saying, was about as tense a situation as I've ever been involved in. The energy was just incredible. It diffused a little bit after she began testifying, Dr. Ford, but there were high stakes yesterday. But the irony is, despite all the drama, nothing changed. We received no new information. Both Judge Kavanaugh and Christy Ford put out their version of what happened. He denied it about as strongly as you can. She came up and accused him of doing this, but again, still had no corroborating evidence. So the senators are going to have to decide whether this person coming forward after 35 years in such dubious circumstances, the corrupt method in which the corrupt method under which her allegations were handled by Feinstein, is enough to derail this man's nomination. And frankly, the other charges that have been leveled against him are just too absurd to take seriously. So it's up now to the Senate to vote in a few hours, and your listeners should let your senators know how you feel about how they vote later today in committee, and then in the middle of next week when it comes to a full vote.
Tom, one of the things that I thought was interesting yesterday during Christine Blasey Ford's testimony was when Rachel Mitchell asked her about why she didn't take up the offer by the Senate Judiciary Committee to fly to California in order to accommodate her fear of flying. Her lawyers apparently did not tell her about that offer. And then we saw Michael Bromwich jump in there and say, we're not going to discuss this. Did they have an obligation to tell her that, or is that okay if your lawyers just don't tell you that they offered to fly out to meet you?
Well, your lawyers represent you, and you're responsible for representations like that. And so when you get lawyers that you rely on Senator Feinstein to find for you, this is why Feinstein did her no favors in having these types of lawyers come in who were playing political games with the Republicans, making up excuses to why she couldn't testify or cooperate with the committee earlier on.
Yeah.
I thought the most disturbing aspect of her testimony, and it was not, I found her generally credible in the sense I thought she was sincere about something had happened to her, and I don't think she was lying when she said Kavanaugh was involved, but I think she was mistaken. But her key friend said, no, it didn't happen the way she suggested. I wasn't at a party. And she said, well, she has health issues.
Yeah,
that wasn't nice. That was not nice.
Right, when she says that Leland Kaiser had health issues, which would explain why she didn't issue a supportive statement on Christine Blasey Ford's claims, and that was kind of a bizarre moment. Also, you kind of
she wasn't even supportive. She refuted what she had.
She said she didn't. She said she didn't recall that ever happening and did not know Brett Kavanaugh. Yeah, so that's a refutation. You mentioned it. You kind of broached it, but I want to get to it. This idea that Dianne Feinstein helped her find her lawyer. That is something that Rachel Mitchell successfully ferreted out, that Deborah Katz was hired at the recommendation of Dianne Feinstein. And all of these Democratic super operatives that are surrounding Christine Blasey Ford, that comes out yesterday and is much more clearly for the American public. And I thought that really worked against the credibility of her claims because it made it seem like such an overt political process. No?
It did. To a degree, there was news yesterday, obviously, other than the drama in terms of factual information. We had further details about the corruption of the Feinstein operation in handling her. And the idea that these allegations were out there and Kavanaugh wasn't asked, you can have two conclusions about. That Feinstein had vetted them, found them wanting, and they only came out after pressure from her colleagues on the committee, and they were leaked, or they purposely sat on them until the 11th, well, frankly, the 13th hour after the hearings were over to try to blow up the nomination. And I think it tends to be the first part. That they didn't ask him about it because they didn't think there was anything much worth asking about. Mm-hmm. That, she may have had these issues, but they were 35 years ago, and there was nothing there to warrant a public hearings or even bothering him with questions about it.
Tom, since you were in the room, I'm just curious, were there protesters outside the room that weren't let in, or were they all at work yesterday?
Yeah, they were all over the place. So you go in, I went into another building, the Big Heart building, which is one of the larger Senate office buildings. Protesters were downstairs staging protests. I went next door to the Russell building, walked up the stairwell to where the meeting floor was, and on the stairwell were evidently protesters illegally protesting. They didn't stop me from going up, but they were there. But eventually they all dissipated. But in the room itself, it was a much smaller room than last set of hearings. So you had to be a guest of the committee essentially in order to view them, unless you were associated with the witness. So we didn't have any protesters there. Alyssa Milano was there, but she was a guest of Senator Feinstein, evidently.
Tom, let me ask you, just because you were in the room and you had a perspective we didn't, I did hear that Senator Hirono was smirking and sneering throughout Kavanaugh's opening statement. Was that your perspective?
I didn't see that. The most interesting thing I saw was that Senator Booker made a point of delivering coffee to the witness.
Of course he did. He's so helpful. Thank you, Tom Fitton. Really appreciate your inside the room perspective.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
All right.